Hey there, Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and I'm happy to bring you here a full pen video review. First one we've done in quite some time. Andy is working with me here today. We are trying out a new format, so I'm hoping that you can be constructive in your criticisms, but also give us a lot of grace because we are trying some things out, doing a little dual cam action, trying to bring you more robust pen reviews than we have in a while. So we're gonna see how this goes. If I happen to be glancing down at my computer a little bit every now and then, please forgive me. I got a lot I want to cover with this pen, and I'm pretty excited about it. So let's get into it, shall we? So I'm excited to show you today the Visconti Vertigo. This is a new pen that's come out that is actually kind of reminiscent of some Visconti pens that came out, and popular around 10 years ago, the Visconti Opera. Now, in the last few years, we've had the Visconti Opera Master, which is a larger version of this pen with some subtle differences, but this one is smaller in size, more reminiscent of the original Opera, and it has some of the brighter resin colors like you would see in those pens. The Vertigo is available in 4 colors. The first one is Burgundy Wine. This is a deep pearlescent burgundy color, sort of like the wines that you might find in the Tuscany region, swirled with a deep, solid black.
Marble Blue.
It's a very deep blue, almost black. I can't decide which one it is. I'll let you determine for yourself. And it has swirls of a pearlescent royal blue. The next one here is Tiger Orange, and this is a deep black base with pearlescent orange swirls. And the last one here they call True Black, which makes sense because it's just black. So the overall first impression of me just holding this pen in my hand is very positive. It's got a very solid feel, solid construction to it. It feels like a really well-made pen. It's got a nice heft and a build quality to it, just like the Opera Master does, just kind of in a smaller version. So one interesting thing about Visconti is with the whole Opera and Opera Master, they have this squared circle design that is unique to them, and it has a very distinctive kind of shape to it. They played off that shape with the Vertigo. It has kind of a squared circle thing, but they added a little twist to it. It has a taper so that it tapers to kind of a diamond shape instead of a square as it goes to the end. It's very interesting. The taper gives it an element of depth to the pen that I really appreciate. And as an added bonus, when you have the pen uncapped and you leave it sitting on your desk, it's not going to roll away. So holding the pen in my hand, the hand feel is something really important to me because I'm an avid writer. I know a lot of you watching this video, you're actually going to write with this pen. So let's talk about the grip. It's a smooth metal grip, which I know is not everyone's absolute favorite, but it is kind of cool to the touch and it warms up a little bit as you use it. That is one neat thing about metal grips that you don't necessarily get with resin. But for me personally, although I'm not the biggest fan of metal grips, this one's not so bad because it's got a flare at the end, so it gives your fingers a place to kind of stop. And then also it has a little bit of a rest kind of right here, right where it doesn't have any threads because it's a magnetic cap, but it does have this one little notch that helps seat the cap in the right place, and my thumb just falls right on that notch and helps give me a nice grip on the resin. That's going to vary depending on your hold, but that's how it works for me. So the step is practically seamless, which is awesome because it doesn't have any threads. That magnetic cap makes it so that there's hardly anything to get in the way of your thumb. The grip diameter of this pen is 10 millimeters, which I find to be right in kind of that sweet spot. It's not too small, not too big. I have bigger hands, and it's right in a good spot for me. I know a lot of other pens that tend to be really popular with people of kind of all hand sizes. 10 millimeters is a really good spot to be. Overall, the pen weighs 40 grams, and you're like, what the heck does that mean? That's a bit on the heavier side. That's going to be something closer to a Visconti Homo Sapiens in the lava version, maybe a Peniter La Grande Bellezza. But when you're holding it and writing it with just the body, not with the cap posted, it's only 24 grams. So a lot of the weight is in the cap. And because of the length of the pen and everything, I actually find it to be quite comfortable to use unposted. When you have it like that, then the weight is only about what it would be with a Lamy 2000 if it were posted, and actually slightly less than a Pilot Vanishing Point. So it's a very workable weight. The balance feels really good in my hand, especially with the body only, because you got the metal grip section, the metal finial on the end really balances it out nicely. When you do post the pen, it adds some weight to the back and makes it a little bit back heavy, as most pens would be that way unless it was just a really, really light cap. but it still kind of seats it nicely in my hand. If you had a smaller hand, it may make it a little too back weighted, but then I think you would be very comfortable using the pen unposted. All right, now one thing we've got to talk about on this pen is the nib, because it has a unique nib. So at the base of the nib, it has engraved the Visconti name as well as the nib size indicator. And you can also see this 14 karat gold overlay that's over top of the stainless steel nib. Now, I don't know whether that's an aesthetic thing or whether it serves any type of functional purpose. All I know is it's a really nice writing nib that looks pretty interesting, and it's the first one that Visconti's done of this type. It's around a number 5 size, and I actually did some experimentation. You can swap this. If you're brave enough to yank it out of the pen, you can swap it with a Visconti Van Gogh or a Rembrandt, so any of the other Visconti stainless steel nibs. I tried swapping it with a standard number 5 Jowo nib. That one felt a little small, so I think these nibs are kind of in between there, kind of a proprietary size. So I wouldn't really swap those too much. So this is certainly kind of a premium pen for having a stainless steel nib on it, I will fully admit that, but it's not just to look pretty, it's actually a really nice functioning pen that writes really well, and we'll get into that in a minute. So the Vertigo has a magnetic cap, which Visconti is no stranger to having that on their pens. But what's interesting about this magnetic cap is because of the kind of squared design, it has to fit in a proper orientation. So it has these notches kind of cut into the grip area that allow the pen to go and seat in the right place. And it has this very satisfying kind of like, you know, crispy noise to it that I really like a lot. So it has that magnetic cap, but if you want to post it, it's just a push to post on the back. So you just kind of press it on there. It does have to be posted in kind of a certain orientation because of that faceted design, but it goes on there pretty securely if you choose to do it that way. The clip on this pen is the kind of classic Visconti bridge clip. So this is modeled after the Ponte Vecchio bridge in Florence, Italy. It has the Visconti logo laser engraved on the side, which makes it a little more subtle than some of the enameled clips that they've had in the past. And it's a spring clip, which is really nice because you can fit it over any thickness of clothing pretty much. And then in the finial on the top, it has the Visconti logo, just like you see on a lot of their other pens. So the center band is fairly distinct because it's so fat, it's really hard not to see it, but it doesn't have a lot of kind of ornate designs on it. It just has a subtle Visconti V right underneath the clip. So let's talk about the filling mechanism for the Vertigo. It's a standard international cartridge converter pen. Pretty easy to undo. One of my favorite things about this pen actually is how smooth threads are between the body and the grip of the pen. I don't know, that's just something I noticed with this pen. But comes with the converter included, and it's a threaded converter, so you can be sure that it's in there securely, which is really nice when you have a pen like this with a metal grip. That means that when you go to ink it inside your bottle, you don't have to worry about the grip dropping into the ink bottle because it's kind of heavy. So that's a really nice feature there. It also fits both short and long standard international cartridges, so you can use either one on the go if you don't want to use a converter with bottled ink. I know because of the price of this pen that you can be thinking, okay, why doesn't it have a piston, or why doesn't it have some other type of fancy filling mechanism? And look, I get it, that's kind of legit. Sometimes that's an expectation, but honestly, I got nothing wrong with a cartridge converter pen, especially because it makes it so easy to swap in between inks. And with a nice writing pen like this, you may want to do that more. I love using the bulb syringe. It's one of the best tools that I've ever discovered in my fountain pen usage history for cleaning out pens, because you just stick it right on the back, you flush clean water through it, and you're pretty much ready to go. So let's ink this bad boy up and take it for a test drive. So I grabbed a bottle of Visconti Blue because I thought that would be appropriate, but you can really use any ink you want. I think a great ink for this pen would be anything kind of conventional, you know? I mean, you could put some sparkly stuff in here, but really I think it just kind of calls for more of a conventional ink. So it's a cartridge converter pen, so you just kind of stick it down in there, pull up on it, take it a little bit slow, bring it back down, you know, if you want to get a really full filling, and then you bring it back up again, and that's pretty much it. You just kind of wipe it off on the side a little bit, you grab your paper towel, give it a little wipe. The thing about this is it's got that inlay, so you gotta take the paper towel and kind of dab in there at the inlay. It's just a little extra step. Depends on how particular you are about that. This is pretty much good to go for me. So now we got this thing inked up. I chose the broad nib because I feel like the broad needs a little love. Rachel's really been into broads lately, and so I'm going to give the broad nib some attention here. But I grabbed the true blue because I love blue, but really all the pens look good. So right after inking it up. Just want to kind of give it a few scribbles to get it going. The Visconti ink is a little on the wet side, so that actually, oh gosh, that feels nice. All these nibs I find to be really smooth. I've written with all of them previously to do the Nib Nook writing samples. I'm not going to ink all of them up today, but wow. Very nice, wet, consistent flow. I don't find the broad to be the absolute broadest, wettest broad out there, but it definitely gives some wet flow. I have Rhodia 80-gram dot pad paper here today, which really shows this ink nicely and gives a smooth writing experience for the pen. The fine I find to be somewhere in between a Lamy 2000 and a Pilot Vanishing Point. So it's definitely more on kind of like the European side. I believe it's Bach that makes these nibs from Germany. So it's going to definitely have more of a European writing feel. Not quite as fine as the Vanishing Point, but not quite as broad as the Lamy 2000 fine. If you go with the medium is going to be kind of more true to most of the other mediums that you see out there. And then the broad, actually I don't feel that it's quite as broad even as the Pilot Vanishing Point is. The Vanishing Point I feel is a broader spectrum. And I'm going with that pen because I think a lot of you maybe have some familiarity with it. So all around pretty good, nice range of nib sizes there between the fine, medium, and broad. So these nibs, the stainless steel nibs from Visconti, I really like, especially if you're familiar with the Rembrandt or the Van Gogh. It's going to feel a lot like that. Very smooth, not that much feedback. Visconti does a really good job and gives attention to their stainless steel nibs. They're very stiff though. They don't have a lot of springiness to it. So if I write kind of just with regular lines, I get that. And if I press harder, I can get a wetter line a tiny bit wider, but it's definitely not anything where you're getting a lot of line variation. So I would say don't buy it for that reason. Just expect a pretty consistent flow of ink to come out of the pen. The pen's going to write really well. It's going to feel good on most papers. It might bleed through with some of like the medium and broad on some of the cheaper papers. So I would kind of go towards the fine range if that's how you intend to use it. But if you're buying your own paper and you can kind of lay it down as thick as you want, man, go nuts. Get something that puts down a lot of ink, and I think you're really going to enjoy the way that this pen writes. And then as far as ink choices for this pen, you can pretty much go with whatever you want. Because it's so easy to clean, you really don't have to limit yourself too much. The nib can pretty much take whatever it is that you want to put down. But I don't know, something about this pen to me just really calls for something like Visconti ink, or maybe a Pilot Iroshizuku, Caran d'Ache, J. Herbin, something a little more conservative where you're not going to have wild properties, but just really smooth flowing, nice shading inks. I think it would suit well in a pen like this. I like to write with my pen at a fairly low angle, so that writes really smooth for me. I find that it writes ever so slightly thinner if you hold it at a steeper angle. That's not unusual. Most pens are ground that way. So you can expect that the way that I'm writing here is going to be kind of the broadest, the wettest that you could expect. But all around, feels really good. So let's talk about the price. It's $475 MSRP. You can log into gouletpens.com if you want to see the best price that we have available for it. So it's not a super cheap pen. I would consider this to be in kind of the luxury pens category. Keeping in mind, you know, you're going to have Italian craftsmen and craftswomen that are working on this in Florence, Italy. So there's definitely kind of a romanticism that goes into the craftsmanship of these pens. I think the Vertigo is going to be a really great pen if you want something that's got a unique nib, kind of an interesting contemporary design, and is just a really solid performer. For more details and up-to-date specs on the Visconti Vertigo, be sure to check it out on gouletpens.com. Thanks so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and until next time, write on.